transformation. It is a heady word tossed around liberally by some business leaders trying to rally the troops. But what if it really were possible to transform the way an organization operates and the results it delivers? For the last 17 years, Vanto Group has been trying to do just that. Its clients operate on every continent and include everyone from J.P. Morgan Chase to Northrop Grumman and the U.S. Navy. Steve Zafron is the company's CEO. He joins us now. Thank you for being here.
Bruce, thank you very much for having me.
Transformation is a big word, but it's something that really is at the foundation of the kind of work that you do with companies. As you see it, what does it mean?
Well, it is a big word, but when it actually occurs for a person at work, it has very real impact on their life and what they can do. As you said, we started 17 years ago as a division of Landmark Education, which is a training and development company focusing on personal transformation. And our charge was to develop applications for the business world, applications that would actually have organizations alter the very substance and nature of what they do and how they view themselves.
One of the cases that I'd like to talk about is some work that you've done in South Africa, Lonmin Platinum Mine. Tell me about what you were trying to do there and some of the results that the work produced.
Well, Lonmin is the third largest platinum producer in the world. Its operations are based in South Africa, north of Johannesburg, right off the Platinum Highway. And they've got about 30,000 employees, and they have communities of about 250,000 people surrounding them. The initial charge was to create some new way of working among the employees and the unions so that the company could actually become world-class. There are government regulations that they need to meet in terms of environment, safety, community development. So over time, it expanded into working with the communities that exist around Lonmin. And what's happened is, over the course of 3 years, well, the stock price moved from $15 a share to currently it's about $66 a share. And the safety improvements in the organization have improved by, well, within 1 year, they were 30% less injuries, lost time injuries. And the environment work that they've done and the social responsibility work that they've done got them certified in 2006 by the government, where most companies need to get certified by 2008.
And attracted the attention of Desmond Tutu.
Desmond Tutu came, we created a group in the community called Voice, or Lensway. Lensway is Swana for voice. And over the course of 2 years, they produced such amazing sustainable results that they wanted Desmond Tutu to see the work that they did.
Wow. Now, you have a couple of, call them elements to your methodology. One is called unconcealing. What do you mean by that?
Well, first, our methodology is very different than most change management methodologies. Change evokes resistance. I mean, who wants to be changed, really?
Not me.
Right?
Not in particular.
Transformation evokes excitement and power. And how it works, even though we'll work on multiple fronts, multiple parallel fronts in an organization, how it works is there's 4 steps, you could think of it. Unconcealing, detaching, implementing, and creating.
Okay.
So the first step, unconcealing, well, you could think of it as revealing to people in the organization, in the teams and groups in the organization, their blind spots, the kind of things that shape their action that we're not aware of. We call it unconcealing, Bruce, because it's like these things are actually concealed to ourselves. They're hidden from our view. They originate in the past, and they're brought into the present in some way that people are limited by that. So getting people to see what's in their blind spots starts to free them up from the impact that has in their work.
So in the context of Lonmin, what would be some of the things hidden in the blind spots that you help people to see?
Well, one of the big things in Lonmin, and I think in most organizations, is what's called silo mentality. So it's people doing their job, and often very committed to doing their job, but somehow unconnected to other parts of the organization. So in many industries we worked in, aerospace, manufacturing, sports and fitness with Reebok, for example, the R&D team often complains about marketing and sales because they want them to design specific projects rather than do research. Marketing complains about R&D being isolated. The management can complain about unions if there are unions there, and certainly vice versa. So people end up doing things that are not connected. Now, where does that come from? That comes from the past, because in the past people were told to measure things this way and be concerned about that. So Lonmin really needed a breakthrough in the overall integration and coordination of all its aspects of the enterprise. what came up to be confronted was the way we do things. We've always done it this way. This is what we measure. And as people started to see that against what they ended up being committed to, a future that was not going to happen anyhow in the normal course of events, that future required people to break up the ways they had always done things and create new ways of measuring and seeing themselves in relationship to each other.
We're going to take a brief break, Steve. When we come back, more with Steve Zaffron, CEO of Vento Group. Welcome back. Steve Zaffron is our guest. He's the CEO of the Vanto Group, and we're talking about transformation in organizations. Steve, you talked about unconceal as part one. Part two, detach.
Well, when something's brought from the background that's undistinguished or unseen, that's in the blind spot, people then can detach themselves from it. They have conversations that detach themselves from it. For example, at Magma Copper Company, a Tucson-based copper producing company, one of the frontline supervisors was working with the managers to collaborate on creating new ways of working. And what he shared was he realized that he and his colleagues viewed managers as incompetent and uncaring.
Not uncommon to have that view.
Right. So he realized there was no winning situation here. So they were willing to give up that point of view, detach themselves from it. And what he said afterwards was, we're rocking and rolling.
Did he change the way he thought, or did he change the way he spoke about them? Or was it a whole bunch of different changes?
Well, it's what you said, but probably even more importantly, he changed the way he listened to them. Because how we listen to people creates what we say, and even what we think and what we do.
Right. Element number three, implement. That word is probably, of all of them, the one that's most familiar to people who have been exposed to consultant speak.
Yeah. Well, you notice we have implement before we have create, which is a little unusual because most situations require the creation of strategies and initiatives, and then the executives or whoever's designing these processes look to see how to implement it. Well, you've heard the phrase, people resist change.
Yes.
We've already talked about that, right? Why? Because they're not the author of the change. They're being told what to do. And sometimes it's unfamiliar, sometimes it's threatening. At Reebok International, we worked on bringing together a very diverse, probably the most diverse group that we've worked with in terms of countries, because their operations are all over the world in all these different countries. And we get people, or invite people, to look at, they're going to create something here. Now, how are they going to implement it? And who are they going to be in the matter of implementing it? Because they're going to be the author of it. So what happened at Reebok was people started to have conversations about their nationalities and how things always had to fit in those nationalities. And what they realized was they were going to create something that would be transcendent to their own particular world, their own nationality, and they would bring it into that nationality rather than try to fit it in.
Interesting. Create is the final element.
Well, create is when you've got detachment, you've got room to create something, you've already got the commitment to implement it, then people go about creating. We have an ability to work with very large groups of people and facilitate that in terms of what the client has requested. But this large group of people, sometimes 150, 200 people, start to create, knowing they're going to implement it. So there's a seriousness in what they create. They start to create futures, but not a future to get to, but a future to come from.
What's the difference?
Well, I can have a someday future, someplace I'm trying to get to. It's out there.
Right.
Pretty much that's how we operate in life.
Yep.
Or I could have right now the experience of a future that I'm really committed to, I'm excited about, I'm turned on, and I'm going to involve other people, try to get other people to join with me, pull with me to create this future. I mean, we really don't actually know what's going to happen in the future. The future is really basically uncertain, right?
Now, how do you deal with people in organizations who are resistant to this kind of process? I mean, in general, people are sometimes resistant to training or the intervention of consultants, but your work operating at the level that it does, you must deal with people for whom this is not what they signed up for maybe when they joined the company.
Oh, well, when you work with thousands of people in the various countries and industries we've worked in. I'll share you a story. I'll share a story with you. In Brazil, we were working with a telecommunications company that emerged out of the government's privatization of the telephone system in Brazil. And they were looking at how do they shift their mentality from government to private enterprise, competitive enterprise. And there was a fellow in this process where the future was being introduced to people and inviting them to create what futures they could see in that future. And that's really the magic element there, or the powerful element. People creating their own future, something that's compelling, inspiring, in which they see they can make a contribution and express themselves. There was this gentleman there, middle-aged man, who sat pretty much like this for the days of the conversation.
Yep.
And then on the third day, he came in wildly waving his hand. And he said he had written a letter. And he had written a letter to the vice president of his division of maybe 5,000 people who he had never met, but who just happened to be sitting in the back of the room. And what he said to the vice president was, I've now seen that I really want to do something here that makes a difference. But I have two requests. I need my toolbox completed. I have missing tools. And I need my truck repaired. It breaks down all the time. Now, I've never really cared about that with my team, because when the truck would break down, well, we'd have the day off.
Right.
But I now want to get to work, so will you please repair my truck and complete my toolbox?
Very interesting. It makes a big difference when that occurs for a whole bunch of people, doesn't it?
Yes.
Now, Steve, one last question before we go. If you were to put a very fine point on the difference in your approach versus all the other thousands of consultants out there, what would be the simple phrase that would have what you do be different?
Well, first, what we're intending to do is unprecedented business results. That's our commitment, partnering with the clients. So we collaborate and design in a partnership with our clients, the CEOs that we work with. Out of that collaboration, we design large groupings that work together and collaborate to create things that they own, that they personalize, that they see themselves fulfilled in. So the degree of ownership and authenticity and the integrity that's required to deliver on that is something that I think is very unique to our consulting practice.
Steve, thanks for making the time for us today.
Thank you very much.
Steve Zaffron is the CEO